So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video.
Gen Z has just taken over Nepal. They've burned down parliament buildings and put the country on lockdown, with 72 people dead in street battles with the police, and then they did something the world has never seen before, by electing their own prime minister via Discord, all in just a matter of days, and the story is even crazier than you think. But here's the part that should probably terrify every government on earth. This all happened through a single Discord server and encrypted messaging apps that you can't shut down. While politicians were busy regulating Facebook and banning TikTok, they completely ignored the platform where Gen Z was planning Nepal's government takedown. Discord, they assumed, was just a gaming app, and that was their biggest mistake. Gen Z rallied around one server called Youth Against Corruption. It had 145,000 members, real-time voice channels coordinating street movements, text channels sharing live protest updates from across the country, moderators who went from organizing gaming tournaments to organizing the overthrow of a government. And here's where it all began. Look at this clip of young university students and school kids protesting in Kathmandu. They were marching towards the parliament building, waving flags, chanting, laughing, and taking selfies when violence erupted around them. There was little warning when live ammunition was fired directly into the crowd. 19 people died on the first day of violence, over 100 more were wounded. The ensuing chain reaction led up to one of the most swift and decisive takedowns of a government anyone has ever seen in recent times. Buildings and cars were set on fire, including the parliament building and the country's largest media house. Politicians were dragged from their homes in convoys and paraded on the streets. This crazy clip shows the finance minister being paraded down a river, blindfolded in his underwear. Politicians were then airlifted out by helicopter. What happened next was the first successful digital revolution in human history. Within some 120 hours, Nepal's administration had collapsed, and Nepal's former Chief Justice, known for her fierce anti-corruption stance, was chosen by Discord to become the world's most unlikely prime minister. This marks something entirely new, a new model of protest where people outsmarted the government and police using just technology. And it all started with a ban that young people refused to accept. On September 4th, Nepal's Ministry of Communications decided to outlaw 26 social media platforms. Their crime? Not filling out some bureaucratic paperwork. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube. Essentially, the entire digital lifeline for Nepal's 30 million people vanished overnight. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, a 73-year-old Communist Party veteran who'd survived 3 decades of coups and uprisings, probably thought this was just some routine government housekeeping. People would yawn, moan, but eventually turn the other cheek and put it into the back of their minds. As it happened, only TikTok and Viber initially bothered with the paperwork, so they stayed online while everything else got the axe. But here's where he completely failed to grasp. Nepal's median age is incredibly low at just 25. For the entire young generation of Nepal, social media was a huge part of their lives. Just like everywhere, it's how they survived economically. Job hunting, freelance work, staying connected with family members working abroad. It's easy to forget that social media has so many uses we just take for granted. The initial backlash was pretty dramatic. VPN service provider Proton VPN watched their Nepal signups explode by 6,000% in just 3 days. But this wasn't just about circumventing the ban, as young people in Nepal saw this as a direct attack on them and their future. By September 9th, those initial peaceful protests spiraled out of control once the police opened fire. A mob then chased the former prime minister's house. They torched his house with his wife still inside. Soldiers pulled her out and she remains in critical condition at hospital as per the latest updates. Hundreds of criminals then broke out of prison and over 10,000 remain at large right now. Around 2,000 people were injured in addition to the 72 dead. As all of this was happening, the government was basically disintegrating in real time. The Home Minister resigned after accepting moral responsibility for the violence. Now, you need to understand where this unrest originated, as it
I think we can figure out where it originated, and it wasn't because people were happy. But let's find out anyways.
Didn't happen overnight. Trouble has been brewing in Nepal for years. The country has become slightly richer, but it also has very high wealth inequality and an extremely high youth unemployment rate. The kid who became the face of this revolution was Vishwa Rort.
Does it sound familiar? Bunch of inequality, more specifically
6 months
wealth inequality. Let's see who this kid is.
Unemployment rate. The kid who became the face of this revolution was Vishwa Rort. 6 months before any of this chaos erupted, the 16-year-old head boy stood up at his school's anniversary celebration and delivered what would become the Jai Nepal speech.
We are bounded by the chains of unemployment, fleeing abroad in search of opportunities. We are trapped by the selfish games of political parties. Corruption has woven a web that is extinguishing the light of our futures. Youth, rise! We are the torch bearers of change. If you do not raise our voices, who will?
The video went absolutely viral against every platform the government would later ban.
You know, if you ever watched any of like the 1940s speeches of Germany's prime minister, I guess you would say, he has the same exact cadence, which is crazy. I'm not saying he's like that guy. I'm just saying the cadence is exactly the same. It's crazy.
More importantly, it crystallized something brewing in Nepal's youth. They wouldn't sit quietly while their future was sold out by politicians. You see, Nepal has a serious corruption problem that politicians and their families have been flaunting on social media for everyone to see. For months leading up to September, people in Nepal had been organizing around a hashtag campaign called Nepo Kids, basically exposing how politicians as children were living like trust fund kids, flying around the world wearing Gucci clothes and Rolex watches, all while ordinary families struggled to eat. That would then later turn out to be a critical mistake. When the government banned social media right after this campaign gained momentum, people connected the dots quickly. On Monday, September 8th, it started with what the organizers called a digital strike. Students across the capital of Kathmandu skipped classes, taking to the streets for a pretty ordinary peaceful protest. And here's where Gen Z found their advantage, as the government ban had completely overlooked Discord. They saw it as just a gaming platform and not social media. And this was a fatal mistake, as Discord became the mission control for the protests and evolved them into something far more targeted and effective. Think about the difference it makes having everyone plugged into an app rather than relying on chaotic word of mouth. Because of its gaming roots, Discord is designed for real-time coordination, from World of Warcraft raid bosses to Counter-Strike and League of Legends tournaments. And now, real protests in the streets. It wasn't just Discord though. Protesters were also using BitChat, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer messaging application that operates over Bluetooth mesh networks. No internet required, no servers, no phone numbers. They covered all bases. It didn't matter if the government even decided to switch off the whole mobile network. People were then uploading tutorials on how to protest, complete with advice to bring college bags and books, and to dress in school uniforms to look non-threatening. And that's when the protest went into another gear.
First off, they banned most of the social media sites except for Discord. And then, which is wild. I mean, Nepal's only a country of 30 million people. Imagine how many of those people were using those social networks to actually make money. And then they banned it, and then people just lost their shit. More specifically, Gen Z, which is understandable. And I think if you look at the times that we're in, most of the attacks in countries that are developed are against the younger generation. Not because, you know, the younger generation can't handle themselves, but the attacks are because the younger generation is the one who can cause all the ruckus. And this is a prime example.
Once the police fired those first shots, Discord was used to coordinate the protesters' movements, helping them regroup and ramp up the attack on the government. Moderators suddenly found themselves running something closer to battlefield logistics, and the precision was on a military level. Medical volunteers got live updates on where the wounded were, and students with motorcycles became impromptu ambulances. Journalists filmed and reported on when and where the police were moving and reported it to the Discord channels. Some protesters were seen brandishing automatic rifles as the police were basically overwhelmed, while the army kept its distance. Now you might ask why the army didn't get involved. It's because their army is known for its peacekeeping and is very rarely deployed during times of civil unrest. Protests are mainly dealt with by the Nepal police and the armed police force, not the army. And so by September 10th, Nepal had essentially no functioning government. The Prime Minister fled and the Home Minister resigned. And that's when we saw the world's first Discord elected government official. The Youth Against Corruption Discord server, now with hundreds of thousands of members, became quite literally a provisional parliament. After hours of debate, someone then suggested that they should select an interim prime minister who could oversee new elections. Frontrunner soon emerged to be Sushila Karki, the 73-year-old former chief justice who'd built her reputation fighting against corruption. What's incredible is how this Discord chat translated into real life. Within hours, she was then sworn as Nepal's interim prime minister, and the country's first female prime minister. Elections were scheduled for March 2026. Nepal had just pulled off the world's first successful Discord democracy, and the craziest thing of all is that it actually worked. The army eventually cracked down on the protests, but without using force. Nepal's army chief called for peace and enforced an indefinite curfew. The focus was then on tending to the dead and wounded, putting out fires and bringing some sense of calm to the aftermath. The army didn't try to seize the government, but instead sat down and talked with the protesters while meeting with a new interim prime minister. Gen Zers through Discord had managed to uproot the government and win the respect of the army, who had to take them seriously at this point.
That phrase is crazy. Gen Z through Discord have been able to uproot the government. Like, just think about that. Through Discord. Not just the application, but the meaning of the word Discord, which is technically unorganized, I think is the exact way you would put that. So it's kind of crazy that happened. Only 160,000 people in that Discord to begin with, and they were able to uproot the economy. That's amazing.
Protesters even celebrated the army on the streets, which took on a mediating role in the whole episode, rather than influencing the cause of democracy and justice. As one Kathmandu resident told the media, when the police failed to control chaos in the country, the army stepped in right on time and saved the country from plunging into a state of lawlessness. The curfew was lifted as of Saturday the 13th, and many markets and shops are now already open as normal. The new Prime Minister announced that the families of those killed in the protest would receive 1 million rupees in compensation, which is about $7,500. The Discord channels are still growing, and protesters are now actively coordinating efforts to clean up the city and support the wounded. The new Prime Minister said she'd stay in power for 6 months to set Nepal on course for genuine change. Young people prove that they have massive say in the country's politics and want the government to serve them, not the other way round. And think about this side of it. Every time people have wanted to overthrow their government, they've needed somewhere to meet up and plan. French revolutionaries hung out in coffee houses. Russian dissidents had their secret societies. You could raid the coffee house, shut down a beer hall, arrest everyone at the secret gathering. But Discord? Good luck raiding a server that exists in the cloud and has users logging in from thousands of different locations. Right. Now, while Discord isn't decentralized and servers can be shut down, in Nepal's case it complemented the truly decentralized messaging BitChat, which works on Bluetooth, meaning even an internet shutdown wouldn't stop it working. And here's the ironic part, the name Discord. Discord literally means chaos, conflict, and disagreement. It comes from the Latin word discordia, the Roman goddess of strife and disorder. Her Greek equivalent named Ares was the one who threw the golden apple, named the Apple of Discord, that started the Trojan War. The platform itself is built to bring people together, but in the context of these incredible events that took place in Nepal, there's a captivating, if not prophetic irony that it's named after chaos. Here, chaos didn't fracture the community, it catalyzed it. It's a truly wild story, and it came in a hectic week of global politics, not just because of Charlie Kirk's assassination, but because of governments collapsing worldwide. In Japan on September 7th, exactly one day before Nepal's protesters got shot in the streets, the Japanese Prime Minister walked up to a podium and resigned. His Liberal Democratic Party, which had basically run Japan since 1955, had just lost its majority in both houses of parliament. This was a huge turning point because they couldn't survive young Japanese voters deciding they were completely done with traditional politics. Among young Japanese voters, the traditional parties like this one are getting absolutely crushed, and now most people are flocking to alternatives instead. And the result is that Japan is now hunting for its 5th Prime Minister in just 2 years. The world's 4th largest economy has essentially become ungovernable. Over in Europe, France had its own spectacular political meltdown. On September 8th,
Yeah, which we're going to talk about in the next video. But all this is crazy. Like, all the things going on around the world, out of all of them, Nepal is the one who figured out how to handle this, I guess, in the best manner, which is, it's impressive, scary, but still impressive. I don't know if we would be that organized here in the US, and I'm not calling for any of these things to happen here, but it is a one of those sites that you think like, damn, how do we get our government to listen to us here in America? If that's even your goal, if you even care.
September 8th, the exact same day Nepal's protesters were dodging bullets, Emmanuel Macron watched his 4th Prime Minister in 12 months get absolutely destroyed in a no-confidence vote. Adding to that, Germany's coalition fell apart, and the UK has protesters lining the streets of London, with a government that both the left and right now hates. And after the Kirk assassination, the US is more divided than it's ever been since the Civil War. And that's when you realize this all probably isn't just a coincidence. According to the Global State of Democracy Project, over half of all countries they track have gotten worse at democracy over the past 5 years. We're seeing, quote, unprecedented global declines in judicial independence, press freedom, and electoral integrity. The numbers are genuinely scary. 45 countries are currently sliding towards authoritarianism, while only 19 are becoming more democratic. The political analyst Ian Bremmer calls what we're entering the G0 world, where basically nobody's in charge anymore, and that creates a power vacuum where a spiraling loss of democratic control becomes more likely. simply because people feel like the system just isn't working for them. You've got rising costs everywhere, stagnant wages, housing that's impossible to afford, and politicians who seemed interested in fighting each other rather than solving problems. When people work hard and still can't get ahead, they start looking for alternatives. Then there's the trust issue. Democratic institutions that used to generally command some level of mutual respect or at least acceptance are now seen as either incompetent or corrupt. The double-edged sword of social media has made political polarization
Not just seen as, incompetent or corrupt for no reason. It's because they kind of are. For lack of a better term, like what would you call a country where you pay taxes and then your tax money doesn't go to not only keep you safe but to make things in the country better? That I would call that incompetency. But hey, I'm reaching.
seen as either incompetent or corrupt. The double-edged sword of social media has made political polarization even worse, but it's also exposed just how dysfunctional a lot of these systems truly are. And young people generally get the worst deal of all, so naturally they're gravitating towards anything that promises substantial change. Which is why what's happening globally is basically a massive experiment on whether democracy can adapt and reform itself, or whether it will be replaced by something else entirely. But Nepal showed us that young people can dictate terms when they're motivated, brave and organized. Their Discord experiment might sound crazy, but they're building something more responsive to what people actually want. It's a bold statement and a glimpse into how politics might work when today's younger generations become the dominant force in political decision making.
That was a really good video by Moon. I mean, he usually has pretty good videos.
Forward.
I don't know if we're at that breaking point here in the U.S. I think there's too many distractions here for us, and there's not enough people suffering to really get to that level. But eventually, all countries get to that point, or all civilizations get to the breaking point where people are fed up, where people don't believe that they even have a chance to get out of the rut they're in, or even be able to move up from whatever class they were born into. And once that happens, then real problems start. So if we ever get there, then I could see a lot of issues here in the US, but as of right now, I don't think so. I think if anything, social media causes a bigger divide. I'm not super worried about it. Who knows, things can spiral real quick.